Infrastructure is crumbling and the problems are only getting worse. The pressure to find solutions is hot. Let's talk about why American cities have no water, no electricity, and no money to fix their infrastructure problems. Welcome to the Infrastructure Hot Seat Podcast, hosted by Chad Smeltzer.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Infrastructure Hot Seat Podcast. My name is Chad Smeltzer. I am your host. Today, we have Scott Andrews, who's the City Assistant Manager with Bakersfield, California. Thanks for joining me, Scott.
Absolutely, Chad. Thanks for having me on.
I'm excited to talk to you, Scott, because you have 20 years of experience in public service. And, you know, one of those things I start with these podcasts on is like, how did you get into the industry and what made you want to get in?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had the love and passion from the start. As the nerdy kid that played SimCity and Civilization when I was a little kid, I always really enjoyed the concept of it. But the way I got into local government was kind of by mistake, by accident. And I was a personal trainer in my late teens and early 20s. And my first government job, ironically, was fitness coordinator for the city of Temple Terrace, Florida. I grew up in Tampa, Florida, so right down the street, the same place that I snuck into as a kid. I ended up working for 11 years, and that was my start to local government. And I would climb the ladder there through recreation for the next 11 years and go to school at night.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Florida, that's a beautiful state, obviously. It's nice and warm. And so just kind of going back a little bit. So did you start in Parks and Rec or something like that? You mentioned to me earlier. Where did you get? Yeah.
My first 11 years were in Parks and Recreation. As I said, my entrance was through personal training, and then next promotion was to athletic supervisor, rec leader 3, and then kind of climbed the ladder in recreation. And had a couple good mentors along the way. My 4-year degree took me 11 years. This doctor thing sounds great now, but it's been a long time coming. Got kicked out of several colleges along the way. Wasn't quite disciplined enough early on in my career, and kind of had it all come together right about the time I moved to the Atlanta area. Just after that, I really give a lot of credit to several mentors I had in my past that kind of shook me out of my comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah, that mentors always help. Coaches and mentors, if you don't have them, you're missing out, because they'll give you the real 360 of your life and what you're really missing out, those blind spots that I've talked about with other people. Super important. So let's go back to your family. You grew up in Tampa. Your family grew up there?
Yeah, I did. I grew up in Tampa, Florida, and lived there up until about 2014. I moved to Georgia. So that's why I served my first 11 years in government. And I found my calling there, so to speak. And, often get the jokes about the show Parks and Recreation at the time. Now it was super popular. So a lot of that stuff really happens, though. It's really true. But my calling was through Parks and Recreation, coaching, connecting, and community were kind of the way I got in. And to this day, they still are the core values that I hold to the city management level.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, you mentioned something during college that you mentioned discipline. And let's talk about that a little bit, because that's a struggle I've gone through to myself still today. It's always about discipline, focus, and structure, right? What do you mean by that?
Sure. Well, really, the only thing I had that I was very disciplined with younger my age was working out. I was a good way for me to blow off steam, and added bonus that you look a little better along the way. So that was the only thing I couldn't focus through college. I couldn't focus even stay in relationships. It was really just what was I doing that day, never looking ahead. So I got caught up in a lot of traps along the way, but it wasn't until a few mentors spoke about the value of mentors.
You were mentioning discipline?
Yeah, discipline is the great equalizer. I like to think that, we're both halfway intelligent guys, Chad, but I think the difference setting us apart in that leap, I won't speak for both of us there, but certainly for me was discipline. And the only thing I had going for me early in my 20s was working out. I just was disciplined in that every single day until I started applying those practices, studying, going to school at night after work, and really just being committed to my relationships and mentors. That's when everything kind of came together. Again, I said it earlier, discipline is definitely the great equalizer.
I've been there, man. You're working out, chasing girls. At least I was, not me, not you, but me anyway.
Yeah, of course.
Distracting myself completely from what I could have been doing, which is, applying myself to get a better education and things like that. So I can relate 100% with what you're saying. And those are struggles that a lot of people go through. I mean, in life, distractions, things like that. And if you're not disciplined, you don't focus, you really lose your path of where you're supposed to be going towards that gift that you have that you just haven't found yet, so to speak. And those are important things. Yeah. So once you had your mentors in place and things like that, when did things start clicking for you and really started to move forward in your public service experience?
Yeah, great question. When I left Florida, I was a recreation supervisor, I believe was my title, and I had half a doctorate at that time. The school really came together. I got the discipline down to a science, but when my custodians didn't show up at the end of the day, I was mopping the floors because I was in charge of facilities. I got mocked a little bit. I was even called Dr. Custodian, and I'm not a chip on the shoulder guy, but that's definitely fueled the fire. So I kind of took that with me. And when I moved to the Atlanta area in 2014, I really came into a perfect scenario. I met a mentor there. He was my first city manager in Georgia. His name's Paul Radford. To this day, very close with him. And he's the godfather. I mean, he would tell you, you walk in the room, he eyes you from head to toe, tells you for looking professional. It wasn't kill you with kindness. He would beat you down to build you up. And I give him a ton of credit for really just the network I established in Georgia, which led to great opportunities.
Yeah. I think you just touched on something I relate to with the directness from a mentor that's very direct, and they're not sugarcoating it. They're not roundabout, like trying to tell me what I need to do. If I find a mentor that's just, Chad, this is what you need to do, I respond better that way. I don't know if it's from my experience with football or whatever, but the discipline, that's what they tell you what to do. Right. So yeah, it's
absolutely. Sometimes it hurts your feelings, but it makes you better.
100%, man. That's so true. That's so true. So in Atlanta, what were you doing in Atlanta then? Were you working for a city at that time?
I was. My next 3 years, I worked with Paul as the economic development director in the city of Sugar Hill, Georgia. So we kind of built that city from scratch and repurposed the entire downtown, activated it with the largest concert event lineup in municipal work, at least for Georgia. So I remember I had Third Eye Blind, Travis Tritt, names that you would know all the songs for, using my office as their green room. And that was just really cool stuff that in government, I'll never do that again in my career, I'm sure. And it was a fantastic opportunity. Got to meet a lot of really exciting people, do some good work. So we took events and used it as an economic development driver to build out the downtown. So we brought people in every 2 weeks for the big concerts that we got a ton of grief on spending taxpayer money for, obviously, but that catalyst led to the development of a $120 million facility next door. And then that spawned another almost $1 billion in private sector money that infused afterwards. So really exciting time in my career. Definitely the happiest I ever was too, looking back. It was a ton of fun. We won the Visionary City Award in Georgia that year and really did some fun stuff.
That's awesome. Wow. That shows the power of events and branding. I mean, really, that's just like I thought of, people wanted to go there, right? To the, where
Absolutely.
You were. Yeah. Wow. So that provide, and that's a thing that a lot of public sector entities, government entities, they don't understand. Like they're a brand, just like a business, right? You got
Absolutely.
You're competing against other entities. I mean, really, if you think about it, what has been some of your experience with like that and competition and stuff?
Yeah, well, that's a great scenario. In the Atlanta area, there's a lot of smaller cities. I mean, you have cities of 30,000 population all over the place. In fact, our immediate neighbor, Suwanee, Georgia, which maybe not all listeners know, but they would know it if they saw it from movies or more than anything. It was just, it's almost like the show Parks and Rec where they're like Eagleton next door. Same thing for us. Suwanee had it going on, had a huge concert lineup, activated their downtown, public arts. So we really elevated our game by having these fantastic neighbors and cooperation. It wasn't competition, really just leaned in and helped each other. So being next to some of those fantastic cities, and still to this day, measuring yourself against best practices and not just whoever's next door is really something I pride myself in.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. Cooperation. What did you call it?
Cooperation. Yeah.
Cooperation. That's a new one, man. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. Wow. That's great. Yeah. And that goes into government in general, like cooperatives, right? For procuring things and these entities can really gain a lot of momentum by doing cooperative stuff together, as you just kind of pointed out. And I see a lot of entities, not always when I don't know why I'm going down procurement, but that's all I kind of related to is like watching them not collaborate together to put their projects together, for example, things like that, which they could save a lot more money. when they do those kind of things. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You package it together to get more state funding, to get more county funding, to be more competitive in the grant cycle. It's like the old analogy, you go further together for sure.
Yeah. And just think about the vendor side of it. If they have their crews there and they're in the local communities where, a surrounding radius, they can move their crews and get things done more efficiently. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Make a lot more sense. So what after Atlanta, how did you end up in California?
That's a great question. After I left the city of Sugar Hill and economic development, I went about 30 miles to the other side of Atlanta in Smyrna, where I was my first city management assignment. Smyrna is the home of the Atlanta Braves, and a lot of fun. Nice. Home plate. It's 3 miles from my city hall, and that's when they won the championship a couple years ago. Again, another moment I'll probably never get in my career, so we really embraced it. And we really had to do some cool stuff. I mean, you're interacting with the team, with the county, and recruiting big businesses to the city, and that was super exciting. And then I put in about 2.5 years there after 3.5 in Sugar Hill. I said, I can do this. I can be a city manager. And I went east of Atlanta to the city of Covington and was a city manager there. That was Covington is Hollywood of the South. There's hundreds of movies and films that are made there in those fantastic Georgia tax credits that have stolen a lot of California's Hollywood scene, is reshaping Covington and a lot of cities in Georgia. It's, again, another fantastic opportunity. You have the beautiful historic downtown square there, and just a totally different environment that I ever worked. I said, I can do this at the city manager level, but let's level up. Let's go to a larger city. About that time, Bakersfield was available. Bakersfield's at 500,000 residents. A lot of people don't realize that. We're almost 500,000 residents. We'll pass Oakland as 8th largest in California, and we'll soon be 47th largest city in the U.S. So while it flies under the radar because we don't have pro sports teams or the busiest airport in the world, there's so much going on there. We're working on high-speed rail. We're tackling very complex issues. We feed and fuel the world as the agricultural leader here in the Central Valley. So we have a lot going on in Bakersfield. I'll gladly share more about that with you too.
Yeah, no, we're definitely going to touch on that in the next 10 minutes. But when your first city manager job in Georgia, what was that like for you? Because I'm sure it wasn't easy just to jump into a city manager job. There's a lot of things you have to do. And me, I don't really understand the city manager role because I was never in that world. I was always in the public workspace. Can you describe to the audience kind of what a city manager does?
Yeah, that's a great question, and probably one that people don't realize all the time. Everyone knows of, mayors, they think of what they do, but in most cities, the city manager runs day-to-day operations. Your mayor is usually a figurehead. In fact, usually doesn't even get a vote. Now you have your key cities, we call strong mayor cities, the LA, New York, Miami, Tampa sort of situation. Those are strong mayors. But the majority of the US, the city manager runs day-to-day operations of the city. So all the things you would think of, police, fire, public works, infrastructure. So that's what the city manager does. Assistant city manager, I've served in twice, and usually you have a portfolio of departments that those range from HR, finance, IT, Parks and Rec, across the board. So when you're city manager, you have all of them, and the size of the city will determine how many assistant city managers you have too. So in Covington, Georgia, I was a first external hire ever as a city manager, and I was moving to a city that was hadn't done a lot of different things outside the box historically, and I'm being careful of my words there. So we're doing a lot of just really neat things and activating the downtown, opening up the visitor center, we helped recruit Rivian to Georgia. That was the largest Georgia economic development acquisition. So we played a large role in developing, bringing movies and films there, activating the visitor center. And all this took place in the historic, beautiful downtown. You've seen it in a million movies, I'm sure, and all the vampire shows, Vampire Diaries and all that, all filmed there as well. Really fun time in my career. I grew a lot. I thickened my skin. I was city manager there during COVID, during the social justice movements in a city that was palpably divided. East-West was exactly how it sounds, black and white. So very challenging. It took a different version of me to kind of level up, and kind of like everything else we do, you're like, hey, I can do this. Let's go to the next level. It just demands a new version of you.
That's a great way to put it, growth. And I going back to the city manager, the way you just described it, I mean, it sounds like the city manager's role is economic sustainability to a community, right? You need to bring in the taxpayer base. You need to increase that, the technology, things like that. You know, from traditional to more of a modernized community, right?
Right.
That's okay, interesting.
Yeah. And
I
your
didn't know
city
if you had something else to
managers,
add.
I'm sorry, sir. Yeah. So city managers report to a board, your council members that
Yep.
people don't turn out to vote for council members. They only show for governors and presidents and things like that. So, even in a large city, a couple thousand votes can swing an election. In some smaller cities, it's harder to win homecoming king than it is to win a council seat. So people's votes really count, and you can truly make a difference. I had years ago some of those awkward steak dinners and was vetted to run for state house or assembly and these different things. But realistically, if you don't toe whatever line that is, left or right, 100%, it's not happening. But at the local level, you get less politics, pure government. We are closest to the people, so we make the biggest impact. And that's kind of my soapbox, but that's why I do what I do. It fuels me just we passed a $700 million budget with 15 people in the audience. It's crazy. But then everyone gets so worked up about Trump, Obama, or whoever.
Right.
They can make the biggest difference showing up in there and looking their council member in the eyes who will listen to them. So that's my local government soapbox. But it really disappoints me that more people don't come out. But I'm totally fueled when we get the people that do.
Do you feel, the first question that came to my mind when you said that was, do you feel like we just aren't reaching the base, our constituent base? We're just not really getting them involved, being more transparent, or is it too transparent? I don't know. What do you think?
No, definitely not too transparent. In fact, I gave the example earlier of budgets passing with limited involvement. The same thing in my city, for example, we have 400 and something thousand residents, but your Facebook feed or Instagram feed may only reach 10,000 of them. And then you have your pockets of the community. And more than anything, everyone's looking down like this and not looking up. And we're all overwhelmed with information. So unless we drive by the park and see, hey, this movie's playing here tonight, a lot of people don't even realize, or they're not engaged. So I think it's government's job to come to people where they are, to reel them in and to show them, hey, there's careers in government where you can lead concert series, or you can make a difference and help build parks, or advocate for your local police department. These are all really meaningful careers. You can make a difference, and you don't have to deal with the national stage of red or blue. I tell everyone it's apolitical, but politically savvy.
I think it's a great way you just described it, as far as like a promotional way of engaging the communities, right? And getting them more involved, is explaining it just how you did. I mean, and that's one thing we're missing. We're not educating and getting that information out there enough where they are, which is, like you said, their social media, like they're sitting there on their phones, but we're not connecting the dots.
Right.
And we're promoting, I've seen city websites or social media channels, and it really is all like, hey, everything's great, like all these, but it really doesn't like get engagement. I don't feel the way it should be utilized. Yeah. Very interesting.
Usually it's a one-way street, pun intended. Hey, this street's closed today, or this park's under maintenance. It's informing rather than engaging or activating. That's something that even my organization needs to do better. We talk about telling our story better, because if there's something horrific, a shooting or a bad car accident involving a fire truck, we get destroyed in the media. But when we do something really fantastic, we're not necessarily selling that story the way we should either.
Yeah. I mean, the examples you just gave of like the concert people that you've brought into these different communities and stuff like that, those are huge accomplishments for people to hear about and know about, and we really don't, like we were talking about, we really don't get it out there enough on those channels, I guess, that we're all talking about, those media channels. And nowadays you can run a media channel for your own city. I mean, you can have any kind of content you want out there. So it's very interesting. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that? I wasn't sure.
I think telling the story and controlling your own narrative. You just said narrative there, and it got me going. Sharing all the amazing community, the amazing people, and the work they're doing. Not just the bad stories or the things that we're reactive to. I think people are overwhelmed by that. I think a lot of people never really bounce back from COVID altogether. I think leading with love and leading your life with kindness in general, and giving that smile. You never know what anyone is going through behind that facade of a smile and mask that they're wearing. So I think it's really on us to not just reach people where they are, but make a difference in their life.
And I think another thing I just thought of while you were mentioning that, because city managers, public works directors, and all the department heads within government, they get kind of scrutinized so much that it makes it almost to the point where you don't want to do the job. I see a lot of it online nowadays, with people quitting and, managers quitting, things like that. I think the constituents need to start respecting and whether it's that or whatever, but I think we need to build a respect there, because you're not getting paid a lot of money. You're doing it for public service, right? That's the goal, is bring the community, and you're not just able to flip a switch and magically things happen, like a new park or new facilities, things like that. It takes a lot of work behind the scenes, and those are the things we probably should be advertising that we're talking about. Yeah, as I'm rambling on about it.
No, that's a great point. In fact, I don't think a lot of people realize that. I mentioned earlier, city managers are appointed by council members. Well, council members flip every two years, so your city manager life expectancy 4 or 5 years, even less than that in some really competitive states. Now, the good news is one man's trash is another man's treasure, and you get a new chance down the street, and you're just traded from the Lakers to the Warriors or something. So that's the good news. But the bad side is burnout is real. I think everyone is stretched so thin. Cities are doing more with less. I know you have a strong infrastructure background, and a lot of times those big expensive projects at the end of the year, sometimes they get punted on. And then these things get pushed for multiple years. And sadly, until something horrific happens, sometimes it's not prioritized. So it's on us to revisit our streets, our roads, our bridges annually, if not more frequently, to make sure they're up to par.
Yeah, you're right on, man. And we just don't have the funding. You look at the water systems nowadays with the contaminants in the water, the PFAS, and all these things we're talking about in water infrastructure. And then in some cities, even here in Illinois, they're drying up. The water is drying up, which is ironic because we're at the lake, but still, it's you got to get access to that water somehow.
Yeah. And on the flip side, here in California, it doesn't rain often, but when it does, we are ill prepared. It's like snow in Atlanta. It's the same thing here. Everything kind of floods. Your sewers are over capacity, and it takes a little while to drain out. Suddenly, everything that's been dry is a flooding river, and it happens in the blink of an eye.
Yeah. It's what do they call it now? Atmospheric rivers. I saw you guys in California were just getting pounded with these storms off the Pacific. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Dealing with climate change. That's a whole nother conversation for us. But yeah, that's it's very interesting. So at Bakersfield, you're in there now. You're how long have you been there?
Been there about 2 years now.
Okay. So what's it like nowadays? Like, what's going on in Bakersfield? Like, can you describe kind of, what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a really exciting time in Bakersfield's history. Historically, a fiscally conservative community. In fact, sadly, a lot of people don't know the things going on here now. Our older audience members may remember Johnny Carson and Bakersfield being a butt of a lot of jokes, and that's the furthest thing from what's going on today. In fact, historically, a fiscally conservative, even Fresno and Bakersfield Central Valley have been more right-leaning than the rest of California, almost anomaly. But what we're seeing now in Bakersfield is a huge change. It's certainly a purple city. In fact, this election coming up may be the first time it goes to lean left ever. Again, apolitical here, but politically savvy. But saying all of that, there's folks in the community like, wow, what's going on here? And a lot of times you see the community not being reflected by the leadership too. So that's a challenge I've had in multiple cities, and it causes some issues. But we're doing some big work here. It's exciting. I mentioned high-speed rail. It's really happening. A lot of people roll their eyes and don't necessarily buy into it, but it's happening here. Tracks are already being laid. It's going to potentially go from Merced to Bakersfield. And where from there, I'm hoping back to LA, because a Bakersfield to Merced high-speed rail line isn't the most juicy ticket in the world, or an economic development driver that we're all lining up for. But it's big, it's exciting. It's going to create economic development around all the station locations. And we're actually looking at right-of-way acquisition and going through that process now. So this is really happening. And then we have the same challenges as a lot of major cities, certainly California ones. We're tackling homelessness head on. It's probably the issue of our generation. It's three-pronged. Obviously, the housing costs being what they are, and housing shortage. And you have the mental health element as well. And then a lot of jail beds just aren't available. Our organizations are stretched so thin. So a lot of times now when someone does something, if it's a petty crime, they could come up and punch you in the face, Chad, and then they're out 3 hours later. They can come back and do it again. I say that in jest, but that's that's some of the things our residents are really frustrated about. That what are the answers? And we're seeing this across the U.S. So it's going to take collaboration and partnerships regionally to tackle these huge issues.
And I first thing that came to my mind was parenting. We need better parenting. That's kind of what I thought about it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, let's think about it. It all starts from when they're young. I mean, and you teach respect. And, you know, when I was a kid, it was all about respecting your elders and things like that. You had to, you know, but we don't have that as much as we used at all in some cases. Same thing in Chicago. You don't, petty crimes just kind of get let go now and stuff like that. But, you know, hopefully there's a rehabilitation like process in there. So, you know, we can help the younger generation get through like, hey, you can't do those things, you know, stuff like that. And there's some kind of coaching or mentoring that takes place from that, I would hope. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect setup for me. So I'll jump on it. We have a violence intervention program, and a lot of this is preventative based. And he nailed a lot of those things there. That's the things you obviously think of, your parks and rec and your libraries, but statistics have shown, and I know you've seen these stats, reading levels often determine the size of the jail beds and the amount of jail beds you'll need later. And I think it's third grade reading levels. So it's very early on, you see these signs, you can predict it. So even our city recently, we did something, again, historically, fiscally conservative community, we contributed to the county's library system to keep the libraries open more, to keep them open an extra day, to try to be preventive in this and give them safe places to go and places that are going to be productive for those young leaders.
Yeah, it's important. We got to have a resource for the kids to go to learn, even if it's not just books, but video courses, you know, because reading comprehension is a struggle all the time, you know, for, you know, young kids. I had similar problems, you know, where videos and audio and AI will probably help us get the kids to the next level, you know, things like that. So the future's looking good. We just need to get over this hump, so to speak, of whatever this turmoil and politically that's going on in the country, obviously, as everyone's seeing kind of play out.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
But Scott, thank you so much for your time, man. Our time's up. I know we could talk about a couple more topics, or maybe we'll do another episode down the road. But how can people get a hold of you?
Sure. They can reach me at sandrews@citybakersfield.com, or feel free to just reach out to me anytime at the link here below.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for joining me. And we look forward to the next one.
Thanks, Chad. I appreciate it. Have a good day, everyone.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Infrastructure Hot Seat Podcast. We hope that this show brought you some insight on relevant topics within the infrastructure world. Please join us every 2 weeks on Tuesday for the next episode. If you're interested in being a guest on this podcast, please set up a 15-minute interview with your host at calendly.com/Chad Smeltzer.